The topic that I am taking today in the theme, the yoga and the next millennium, the topic is dietetics. As an enunciation, let me tell you that yoga in the next millennium is going to provide a great insight and revelations to human mind. Firstly, it will reveal the human mind to human mind itself. It will reveal the human mind to the human being. Yoga will provide answers to some so-called perennially intriguing questions, unsolved and unsolvable questions. Yoga will revolutionize some dogmas, some concepts, some theories, if I may say so, perhaps some sciences itself. Yoga will open up new avenues. The human being, which reveals everything but itself, will be able to reveal itself. And you might be surprised, or perhaps you might think that it is absurd to say that dietetics is one such science that is going to get a very big jolt. And secondly, dietetics is going to blast the whole paradigm that the science has today. And this is what I said you might feel absurd. What's the relationship between the dietetics and the science and technology? So what I am trying to say is that the dietetics will revolutionize many sciences. But you may wonder as to why I have taken this topic, dietetics. Because there are various other important sciences, and we need a revolution in those sciences. That is why I said today it might appear very strange, perhaps laughable, perhaps ridiculous to say that dietetics is closest to man, and it is capable of influencing all the sciences. So today you might laugh at this statement. But maybe in about 500 years from now, this statement will be compatible. The man then will think of diet or the food not only as if meant for the tongue and the belly, but for the whole human being. So let me give you here a sort of pre-audition. I have chosen a format of dialogue. So let me give you a pre-audition of a dialogue that will take place in a preceptor and a disciple. The disciple, perhaps in 2500 AD, will come to the preceptor, will come to the Guruji, will come to the teacher as this question is asked by human being even today: what should we eat and what should be our diet? So the question is going to remain even then. So the disciple comes and says, "Sir, how and what should be our diet?" The preceptor would counter question, "Diet for what?" Well, disciple would say, it should be for our well-being, sir." Preceptor, with a smile on the face, would say, "My dear child, the man can be anything between and from a saint to brute and brute." So man can be anything between saint and brute. Whose well-being are you speaking about? Secondly, the man can be anything between a laborer who breaks the stones and a brain-splitting intellect. So the diet for whom? Do you want the diet for a worker who breaks the stones, labors, or are you asking the diet for one who has brain-splitting intelligence? The disciple would say, "Sir, we have come for a solution and not for perplexation." We are made to believe, sir, that the food is for the body and for the physique. The thing is that the pragmatism of 19th century, 20th century, 21st century and 22nd century thought, this is the disciple speaking, disciple says that the pragmatism of those centuries thought that the food is for the physical body. The man raised up a structure of the science called dietetics for physical well-being of human beings with an intelligent enunciation that the food is for the well-being of mankind. Obviously, what I am trying to tell you is that well-being of the stomach and the tongue doesn't necessarily mean well-being of human beings. You see, dietetics is speaking for something for your tongue and your stomach, but with an enunciation that the dietetics is for well-being of human being. The preceptor would say, but then the physical being is not the whole human being. The disciple says, "Sir, certainly, we can understand that." Preceptor says, "Then what is mankind?" And then the preceptor begins to bestow wisdom to disciples. The man is not just the body. The man is body, senses, mind, emotions, ego, intelligence, so on and so forth. All those faculties and facets which are in the embodiment with the soul as epicenter is human being. All the faculties and facets which have the soul as the epicenter is the human being, and therefore well-being of all those aspects is human well-being. The man is not just the muscles, the flesh and the bones. The dietetics then will realize that the food is not only for the flesh, the muscles, the bones. And this will be a big disillusionment. Because even in today's pragmatism, we believe that the food is for the flesh, muscles and bones. The food is really for the well-being of mankind. But the thing is that the physical being is not the whole of mankind. The food must be nourishing not only the body, but also the senses, the mind, the intelligence, the ego, the emotions, and the whole psyche and the physics. Every aspect of human being and every facet of human being must be nourished with the food. Coming to present era. Today the pragmatism thinks that the food and dietetics is for physical well-being, as if physical well-being is whole of human being. It will be a very bitter truth that our pragmatism today, or the pragmatism of today, will be ridiculed in centuries to come. The generations of 2500 AD will laugh at our pragmatism with which we are proud today. The man in the last 2 centuries made great strides in the realms of science and technology. Man feels that today he is more knowledgeable than ever before. This concept is prevalent predominantly in the West, that we are most knowledgeable than ever before, or the human race ever before. But the thing is, although no doubt the man is knowledgeable, he knows about the cosmos, he knows about the galaxies and even extragalactic aspects he knows. He knows this world, he knows the world beyond this world, he knows the galaxies beyond these galaxies. But all that development has left human being ignorant about himself. Man knows the most. The man knows the most about all and least about himself. This is the travesty. Now let us begin with the food and dietetics. The generations after few centuries will declare that the food is not only for the body, the flesh, the bones, as they would say our ancestors thought. But they would say that it is for whole human beings, and this is the first and foremost principle, that the food is for whole human being and not just the tongue and the belly. Secondly, as I will proceed, you will come to know that dietetics is going to blast the paradigm that is there for science and technology today. And still it will be an absurd statement for you until I clarify about it. But anyway, the dietetics then will deal with not only what to eat, but also how to eat. That is, in what state of mind to eat and in what state of mind not to eat. Secondly, it will also stress upon where to eat and where not to eat. The present dietetics doesn't bother about it. Where to eat and where not to eat. At the most, it will say that you should eat in hygienic place, that's all. And apart from these two, the dietetics will also deal with how and who should cook the food. How and who should cook the food. That is, in what state of the mind the food should be cooked and who should be cooking the food. Not only that, but furthermore, how to procure the food will also be an aspect of dietetics. How to procure food means what should be the economic activity to procure food. Today we require money for the food. If you have money, you buy the food. You procure the food with your money. But the dietetics will stipulate how the money should be earned to procure the food. It will describe as to how the food procured by earning the money with foul means, what will be the effect of it on the food. Anyway, the most basic question is what to eat, and this depends upon what you want to be. What to eat will depend upon whether you want to be a bifooted beast or bifooted creature or bifooted giant, a brutal wrestler or intellectual or materialistic or temporal, crazy or sensible, temporal or spiritual. All these factors will decide what to eat. Basically, the dietitian will first question you, what do you want to be? And I told you these various varieties. You can trace the human beings, anything between these. So, obviously, as far as we are concerned, we would certainly not ask the diet or dietetic restrictions to become bifooted animal, bifooted creature, or a giant, a demon, or materialistic or temporal or crazy. Obviously, the disciple would seek an answer to the question that I want to be spiritual and what should be my diet. And naturally it is necessary that we only take into account that aspect. We do not have to bother about what to eat to become a wrestler, what to eat to become an unscrupulous brute. And for this, the disciple or the people in that era will look at Bhagavad Gita for solutions. The Bhagavad Gita describes the food of tamasic people, or the food that is liked by tamasic people, the deluded ones, the torpid ones, the unscrupulous ones. So their food is described in Bhagavad Gita. Then there are Rajasic people, the sensual ones, the cupid ones, the passionate ones, the temporal ones, the materialistic ones, and their food is described in Bhagavad Gita as the food of Rajasic people. And of course, most of the commoners belong to this strata. So therefore, the sensual, the crazy, the disquiet, the passionate people would go after Rajasic food. Bhagavad Gita mentions the food of Sattvic people as well. The food for Sattvic mind and the food of Sattvic people. And this food is for the exalted ones, those who have spiritual endeavor in life. The spiritual minded ones, those who have spiritual quest. The practitioners of yoga particularly. The seekers of wisdom. The seekers of essential ultimate bliss. We will go by the Sattvic food which is described in Bhagavad Gita. Well, in the books of yoga, books of spiritualism, Bhagavad Gita itself and the commentaries on Bhagavad Gita, you can find the description of Sattvic food. So well, now we are coming to an important aspect. The statement that the food is meant for whole human beings. So therefore, the food that we eat does not just produce enzymes for our body, for the cells, for the metabolism, or in the metabolism. It does not just provide enzymes for the cells and fibers of the body and tissues of the body, but it also provides, if I may say so, enzymes for intellect, enzymes of ego, enzymes of mind, and enzymes of emotions. Today such a concept is ridiculous, like enzymes of mind and enzymes of emotions and enzymes of intellect. Now how does this happen? How is it that the food can provide enzymes for all and those various and all facets and aspects of human beings? The food is really food for every faculty, not merely your tongue, the cupid and carnal tongue, and the belly below it. The food that we eat is processed in the body in such a way that every faculty of us will receive not just something but everything. And that is why the food will be declared as food for the whole human being. The Chandogya Upanishad, one of the oldest Upanishads, will become the text of the day, will become the text of Dietetics. It says that the food that is eaten is processed and there are three outputs. The gross output, the middle output and subtle output. The gross output of the food turns out fecal matter. The middle turns out the flesh, the fat, the muscles, the bones. And it surprisingly says that the subtle turns out the mind. Chandogya Upanishad says that the subtle aspect of the food turns out the mind. And as I told you on several occasions, the mind is complete of human being. Body is the gross mind, and rest everything is mind. Chandogya Upanishad declares Annamayahi Saumyamanaha, Tejomayi Vak, Apomaya Pranaha. From the food, the mind is turned out, and from the fiery food, in the sense the oil, the ghee, etc., the organ of speech is turned out. The speech in the sense outer speech and inner speech. And apomaya pranaha, the pran is developed from liquid and watery part. Well, we definitely experience without water for some time, our life is in stake. We certainly realize the food of pran, the water, only after some hours have elapsed after you are thirsty. So, well, what to eat need not be instructed to you, because I assume that you have read Bhagavad Gita and you know about it. But secondly, the implied purport of Chandogya Upanishad also puts stress on who should cook the food. And that is a very influencing factor on what you eat. You see, because the mind behind cooking is more important than the taste of the food. You follow? The mind behind cooking is more important than the taste of the food. And we do experience, we do acknowledge, if something is given by love, it scores over the taste of the food, and it is tastier than the taste of the food. The food becomes tastier than the taste of the food if the food is given by someone who loves you, and someone who has cooked with love for you. On the other hand, if the food is cooked with ill mind, however nutritious the food may be, it will not be nutritious to the system. So even if you eat rich food cooked by a person with ill mind, commercial mind, however rich or however tasty, body will not really accept it. So therefore, the mind behind cooking the food is very, very important. Therefore, in our tradition, we don't have the concept like cooking the food. Or we say cook the food and food is being cooked. That is not our traditional concept. The traditional concept is auto-cooked food. It is believed by our traditions that one must cook one's food, or one must eat the food cooked by someone who is not different than oneself. Well, it would be the best if you have someone to cook food for you, like your loving mother or loving wife or loving beloved. That would make a big difference in what you eat. So dietetics will take into account that important factor which is very, very, very influencing. And despite our pragmatism, no heed has been paid for that. You only see what is in the dish. Whereas it will be very, very important, it's very, very influencing, and this will be realized by the dietetics, and it will definitely put stress on who should cook the food and with what mind the food should be cooked. Secondly, procuring the food is also very, very influencing. Our ancient wisdom had realized this, but today we see no pragmatism in it. You want to see that the food material is very rich and very good quality, high quality, super quality. No matter if it is earned by foul money. Money doesn't matter. Whichever money you have in your pocket, whether earned by foul means or righteous means, makes no difference for you and me. We only go to a super shopping, buy selected food stuff, get the best super quality, and we think that we consume super quality food. But the money with which it is bought definitely has very strong influence on it. And that will be an important factor which dietetics will take into account, and it should have been taken into account. Because if you have earned the money with foul means, it will be not really nourishing. The food will have many ingredients of the nature of abuses. If the money is earned in foul means, all that you procure from that money, apart from the material contents or the constituents or ingredients or physical ingredients of the food or whatever, there is extra physical element. It will contain profusely the abuse, and therefore you can just imagine what will be the effect of such food when eaten. Secondly, it will also realize the importance of the question when to eat and when not to eat. It is not proper to go by time, the clock. 1 o'clock it is now, therefore I should eat. Or it is 9 o'clock in the evening and therefore I should eat. When to eat and when not to eat has tremendous influence on the food, because the food is processed by the body chemistry, which we understand today also. Therefore, its process will be influenced by the state of mind that you are in. And it will be pragmatic for the dietetics to take into account this particular aspect, when to eat and when not to eat. Any time is not food time. It is an unprincipled practice. The state of mind while the food is being eaten plays a very vital role on conversion of food. The food is converted once it goes down the throat, or even in the mouth itself. The process begins with saliva. So the process begins the moment the food has gone into your mouth, and the process is there for conversion of food in various things like enzymes. So the conversion of food starts taking place for biological enzymes, for mental enzymes, for psychological enzymes, for mental enzymes, for emotional enzymes, for intellectual enzymes. So therefore you will understand that if the food is not eaten in proper frame of mind or not procured in proper means, it will not be proper. The noble means must be there. The means must be noble in procuring the food. The means must be religious. The noble means and the religious means are more than nectar, even if no such nutritious biological value is there in the food. Psychodynamics behind consumption of food is also very important. If I may say so, it is more important than much important. Usually, the tongue is the supremo as far as the food is concerned. But the tongue is not the emperor in human system. Obviously, we understand this. That the tongue is not the supreme aspect in the human system. But more often than often, the food is under discretion of indiscreet tongue. You follow? The consumption of food is under the discretion of indiscreet tongue. You can understand the tyranny now. When the tongue is crazy and delusive, the moment the morsel has gone into the mouth, this stupid tongue, it squeezes this substance voluptuously. Just imagine how is the system. The mouth is the gate. The mouth is the gate of eating process. And the tongue is just a security guard to tell us what to eat and what not to eat, with the nose around it, with the eyes around it. Merely a security guard to tell us whether it is eatable or not eatable. But this becomes the chairman of the system. Just a gatekeeper, the tongue which is just a gatekeeper, becomes the managing director or the chairman of the system. And it pounces upon the food, and on account of its craze and delirium and voluptuousness, this substance is squeezed by it. And rotten pulp is sent down the throat. And finally, perhaps the major receptors, the biological cells, just receive an invoice. Srikhanda is eaten. Jalebis are eaten. Laddu is eaten. It just gets an invoice. Voluptuous tongue pounces upon the food, and the substance is sucked by it. You can imagine the craze of the tongue, and if it is crazy, how it would behave with the morsel of food that has gone into your mouth. As a matter of fact, as we understand today, biological cells are major receptors. But imagine the role of the tongue in not only selecting and letting in the food, but raping the food, if I may say so. The tongue rapes the food and takes out the substance, and that's why I said the rotten pulp is sent down the throat. Well, when this holistic dietetics will prevail and the wisdom will prevail, the major outlook in life itself will be holistic. I told you one of the statements that the dietetics is going to blast the paradigm of science and technology today. And let me answer that question now at this point of juncture. You see why the science has evolved and developed. There is, I don't know whether it is in English, but in vernacular there is an expression, गरज ही शोधाची जननी है. The need is the source of discoveries and inventions. The major impediment for the science and technology is our needs. The moment we have a need for something, we try to evolve a technology. We try to discover the science which governs the principles behind that, and we try to evolve technology and get what we want. This has been the paradigm of the science. The discoveries and inventions have taken place primarily depending upon what human being requires. There are some exceptional cases where without the need discoveries have taken place, but the man is impelled into it. Such discoveries have taken place as a byproduct. But the man has looked into science or has tried to understand the science or the laws which govern this world and the universe at large, primarily to get satisfied his needs and desires. That is why the vernacular expression is the desire and the need is the womb of discovery. If you want something, you will go after discovery of it. And if something is discovered which is not wanted at that point of time, it will be byproduct. You are trying to discover something and something else is also discovered. But human being endeavors to know something, and what know something, it is not just something that he very much wants. And this has been major impediment for scientific development. The man wants materialism. The science has now become servant to subserve this human being who is going after materialism. The technological development is all for our materialistic comforts. The science is subserving, the technology is subserving our desires, our wants.
The dietetics will change our demands. The dietetics will change our desires, because the dietetics will change our mind. Our search will change. Our requirements will change. Our search will change. And if the search changes, the sciences would also be different.
The sciences that we have today are because we have a peculiar desire pattern. We follow. The sciences that we have realized today, the technology that we have evolved today, it is because of we have peculiar desire pattern, peculiar need pattern. We have specific and particular needs, and therefore we have gone in pursuit of attaining those or satisfying those needs, and the science has evolved, technology has come up. But when the holistic dietetics will prevail, when the wisdom will prevail, naturally the human being will be wanting what the today's human being is wanting. It will be different than that. It won't be the same that we want today. Today we want traveling journeys, traveling comforts, fast traveling instruments, so that we can fly from this point to that point. For what sake? For the sake of business of life, with just the outlook of economics and our crazy sensory complex. Our crazy sensory complex wants certain things, and therefore the technology got impalement, and that is why technologically we are what today. But when the desires change, aspirations change, obviously the search is going to change, the quest is going to change. Do you follow? When the desires are going to change, the search will change, and if the search will change, technology will change. So certain sciences will go into background. The sciences and technology of making fast money, nourishing the crazy, voluptuous sensual body, all those things will go into background, and therefore many industries will suffer, many technologies will go obsolete. So the point is, the desires change the search, and the search then will be different. Therefore the discoveries will be different. Inventions will be different. All those will change. The science will change. That is, the science that is in the forefront. Because the scientific laws will not change. That's not the question that we are dealing with. But the sciences which are now governing the society, the human race, the sciences which are in the forefront today will go into background, and the sciences which are not surfaced, which have not come onto the, which have not appeared on the surface will appear. So the sciences will change, the world will change, and the changes will be essential. And all these changes will depend upon our food. As also we understand and acknowledge today that this mind is the governing aspect in us. All that we should want and all that we should do, all that we should not want and all that we should not do is decided by the mind. It is the rule of the mind. and in all the times. That is why I said the other day, the man is mind. Therefore, as a coincidence, even in the English word man, there is man. I'm sure you know this Sanskrit word man for mind, manas for mind. And it is quite a coincidence that even in English, the word is man for man, because there is mind in man, man is mind. And that's why we say human being, but what we visualize is you body being. The word is human being, but then our concepts are woven around you body, if I may say so. The body with 2 legs, 2 hands, head on the top, 2 eyes above the nose, by the side of the nose, 2 ears on the sides, shoulder below the neck, then the trunk, and then the legs, the lower extremities, upper extremities. But the English word is not you body being, although we know the man by the body. That's a coincidence. That even in English there is a word like human being, they have brought man there in human. So the point is that this mind, human mind, is the governing force. All that you are is because of the mind. All that you will be because of the mind. All that you were was because of the mind. Understand the mind as a centric force. Understand the status of the mind in human system. Understand the governorship, the governing position of human endeavor. So far, the mind which has been turned out by peculiar food habits has turned out the present human being. And if there is to be a transformation in human being, that is in the mind, only way is the food. We have seen the theorem from Chandogya Upanishad, Annamayahi Saumya Manaha. The finest aspects of food turns out the mind. So therefore our mind is what we eat, rather our mind is what we have eaten, our mind will be what we eat. Do you follow? Our mind is what we have eaten and our mind will be what we eat. Usually otherwise we, particularly students of yoga, express helplessness, when it comes to principles of yoga. If you question yourself, why can't you practice ahimsa, satya, asteya, brahmacharya, aparigraha? Why can't you practice meditation? Why can't you do dhyana? If you sit and close your eyes, you should go in dhyana, you should be able to do japa. But the more you take up meditative practices, more chaotic you become. And that's how usually the japa sadhana is terminated. You grow restless and you feel like stopping the japa. You feel like stopping the meditation because you come to know that you are more restless while you meditate than you are otherwise. And then you say, well, I don't have mental disposition, I don't have mental culture, I don't have mental fabric. It will happen. It will happen after several years, or it will happen after several lives. But this is mere haplessness and helplessness. The theorem clearly says that the food processes the mind. Therefore, if you want to do anything with the mind, it is by the food, with the food. If you want to manipulate your mind, evolve it, devolve it, all is by the food. You have to manipulate your food, therefore the infrastructure of mind can be changed. The spiritualism, the Adhyatma goes beyond. The moment, of course in holistic dietetics, the moment the food is thought about, it is not merely the food that is eaten by the mouth. As we also understand that there is food for intelligence, there is food for mind. And sometimes we say when you have tremendous or gloriously an intellectual interaction with someone, you say it was an intellectual food. It was food for mind. So there is something as food for mind, there is something as food for intelligence. So all that goes into us is all the food. All that goes into us is all food. So even what you see is your food. What you hear is your food. What you touch is your food. What you think is your food. So when yoga and spiritualism stresses on purification of food, it takes into account the food of every single gate through which the things go in. So as students of yoga, or the students of yoga in 25th century, will have this additional aspect in dietetics: what to eat through the eyes, what to eat through the ears, what to eat through the mind, what to eat through the intelligence will be also an important component, although not for generality. However, generality will identify the importance of food for the mind, and if the food for the mind is changed, we come to the circle. If the food for the mind is changed, mind is changed. If the mind is changed, disposition of your eyes will be changed, disposition of your ears will be changed, disposition of your nose will be changed, disposition of your mind will be changed, and their food will also be changed. Therefore, ultimately it is the food that we eat is a very important constituent, and therefore the dietetics will take into account all those aspects. And then as far as the processing aspect of the food is concerned, which is processed in the body, we know that what the food turns out is not one and the same. If we decide to experiment that all of us, including Guruji, will be eating one and the same food for 15 days, 30 days, 45 days, it will not be proper to say that what the food will turn out will be one and the same. Although input is the same, maybe we'll decide that all of us should be eating only apples and milk, including Guruji. Don't think what will be turned out will be one and the same, because of the industry within us and within him is big difference. There is a big difference in the chemical processing that will take place in his body, and our bodies will be very much different. Well, even this can be testified. Sorry to disturb the holy atmosphere, but suppose all of us stick to that diet, and if the fecal matter is tested, don't think it will be one and the same. Therefore, what the apple and milk will turn out for Guruji and what it will turn out for you and me will be very much different. For various reasons. That it is not only the organic complex which, if we consider as a factory, which is processing the food into enzymes. Apart from that, there will be other factors influencing, like the state of the mind. In what state of the mind you eat definitely influences the processing process. Do you follow? The state of the mind will definitely influence the processing process, and therefore what will be turned out by the apples and milk in him and what will be turned out in you and me will be different. So therefore, that is also an important aspect of dietetics, or rather it will be. Today we don't bother. The dietitians or the dietetics just say that you should be eating this, not this, not this, not this, not this, not this. Perhaps they have very gross classifications, tabulations, age, sex, working conditions, etc. What sort of work that person is doing, physical work or intellectual work. It's all very, very gross classification. Because that work is an external work. You can't consider the labor as one class. For various reasons, there can be a laborer who is breaking stones, who is mentally of the caliber of Guruji. For various reasons, it can happen. While the dietetics will prescribe same food because they are all stone breakers. We follow. If there are 100 workers who are engaged in stone breaking occupation, one of them might be having the mental caliber of Guruji or any saint or any brute or a common human being. The dietetics does not make any difference. What a pragmatism. Well, before the generations after 2-3 centuries laugh at us, let us laugh at us, ourselves. What a pragmatism that we are undergoing. If it is an intellectual class, working in office, chairman, executives, even if the age is same, the frame is same, we say this is the food for you. But the entire internal mechanism which is behind it, the caliber of mind, the nature of the mind, the state of the mind, all those are so very vitally important. And look at our stupidity in our pragmatism, that we have paid no heed to such a vital aspect. So therefore, the whole process or whole mechanism through which the food goes is also an important aspect to be taken into account. But then also let me bring to your notice, it doesn't mean that your eating apples and milk along with Guruji makes no sense. No. Although your mechanism is peculiarly, or our mechanism is peculiarly different, we might say that the apple and milk will turn out something great for him because of his mechanism and his state of mind. It will not be pragmatic to hold that it will not make any change in us. It will certainly substantially make a change in us. So therefore, the thing that we have got to understand today is that the food that we eat does not only turn out biological enzymes, but psychological, mental, intellectual, emotional, you name any faculty, it will develop enzymes for all those things. Therefore, in those centuries, the man will certainly discover something like psychological enzymes, mental enzymes, intellectual enzymes, and the dietetics will justify all those aspects which influence the food. As far as yogi is concerned, the food has further greater influence. The spiritual reality, ultimate reality about the food as to who eats the food, ultimate reality is realized by yogis and not you and me. We think that we eat, we think that we should be eating, and we think that we eat and we have eaten. But that is a physical reality. It is not ultimate reality. This is because we have the psychodynamics that I eat the food or we eat the food. We have peculiar approach in eating the food, consuming the food. Because obviously we would eat what we want. We would certainly not eat what we do not want, because we think that what we eat is for ourselves. We eat and therefore we decide what to eat. But that is not ultimate reality. Because in that case you will be never be having selflessness in consumption of food. Obviously you are eating for yourself, therefore you are eating what you want. And if there is a want in you, you are not selfless. So obviously food will be eaten, and food is eaten selfishly by you and me and all. When it comes to yogis, realized ones, the spiritually evolved ones, they realize the reality that they don't eat. A spiritually evolved saint, mystic or sage doesn't eat by himself or himself. Well, I will conclude this by giving you a very interesting story from Mahabharata. Which tells us about the fact, the reality that one who eats is not really the finite soul. On the other day I told you, as a matter of fact, the soul doesn't require anything. The metaphysical aspect of I, the metaphysical self doesn't require anything. It doesn't require food, doesn't require water, it doesn't eat, it is not eaten. But then who eats? The story in Mahabharata is such, that once Vyasa was passing by the river Yamuna, and the river was in spate, heavy floods. And he found that some of the milkmaids were waiting on the bank of the river. They wanted to cross the river, go across to the other bank, but no boatman was available because the river was in floods. So they were waiting and waiting. It was getting darker and darker, and their fear and anxiety, the worry started growing. How will I reach the other bank before it gets dark? This was their worry. Well, they found an ascetic sitting there on the bank of the river. Well, they thought it is perhaps this only ascetic that can help us. So they go to the ascetic, bow down to the ascetic Vyasa. They do not know that it is Veda Vyasa, but they just think that it is just an ascetic. They come to the ascetic and say, "Oh revered sage, please help us, save us. We are caught on this bank of the river, we have got to go across before it gets dark, and we are not getting any boats. Please help us to go across before it gets dark." The sage says that the fire in my abdomen is raging forth, and unless that fire is extinguished or something is offered to that fire, I am of no help and no use. Well, they say that is no problem. We have vessels and vessels of milk here. Where is the problem for you then? And they offer him the vessels and he consumes milk and then says on a vow, "Oh Yamuna, if this milk is not consumed by me, please split apart and let these maids get a way to go across." These maids get infuriated. They say, "You lying fellow, you are lying here, you have consumed our milk, and what is your vow?" You say, "If I have not consumed, let the river split." How can it happen? In no time, the river starts splitting apart. And the way is made in. And they are wonderstruck. How could this happen? He says, "First go across." You wanted that. And all of them go across. But then they are inquisitive. How is it that your vow was such untruthful and still it works as if that is the truth? He says, "My dear innocent girls, the food was not consumed by me. It was consumed by the divinity within me. I just merely offered the food into that altar. I offered the food into the altar. The consumer was divinity. It is he who consumes." That is why Bhagavad Gita says, "Aham vaishvanaro bhutva praninam dehamashritaha pranapana samayuktaha pachamyannam chaturvidham." Lord Krishna says that I reside in the belly of human beings as gastric fire. And it is I who digests the food. The 4 types of foods which are consumed, it is I who digest. Well, obviously, if that governing force within us is not there, the food won't be digested. Otherwise, even the food can be digested in a dead body. So, one who eats is only divinity, one who consumes is the divinity, because it is his universe. Everything is his. And whole living, non-living aspects are just instruments. The noble sages, yogis, realize that they are instruments of the divinity. We think that we are owners of the divinity, of the instruments. We think that we are the owners of this instrument. Yogis know that these are the instruments of divinity. That is the reality. This is not reality. Well, the point is, the food makes the man what he is. Food makes the man what he should be. And therefore the spiritual seekers worship food as Brahman. Annam Brahmeti Vyajanat. Annam Brahma. Anna, the food itself, is considered as Brahman, because what we aspire will be ultimately bestowed by the food. The food is not merely food. Food is yoga. Thank you. Krishnarpanamastu.